There we are.
That's y'all. Ooh, that's loud.
It is?
Yeah, a little bit.
You think?
I like
I think
it
you guys
loud.
are,
No,
you guys are pansies. I don't like when they don't put my name on my coffee. Steel's so expensive. Come on now.
Yeah, you should at least get your name.
Personalize this deal for me, guys.
Me
If
and
you
Wes,
order on the app, it's not even handwritten anymore. It's just printed. So it takes away some of that, too.
me and Wes
so,
spent
too.
the weekend together. Pretty well.
You're dying to talk about the weekend.
A little bit.
14 times before we started the show.
It sounds like
JT's
JT
hey,
nearly
let's
like
get some
ruined his
talking
whole
about the weekend.
family this weekend with partying.
No, I left him alone during the day. I went to a golf tournament during the day. So
It showed up right as the wedding was ending. It was the best thing ever.
It
So
was
the wedding,
insane. I
JT
do.
literally blew off his niece's wedding to be at a golf tournament and rolls up right in Murder Silverado, right? The new rig.
Murderado. Yeah.
Murderado. Rolls up right as soon as I'm saying, you may now kiss the bride.
Perfect.
And
timing.
it was perfect timing. He missed the whole deal.
He's just
And
there for the reception anyway. I mean, why waste time?
bro,
Take
I
up a
killed
seat,
it.
all that.
I killed this sermon. I killed
I mean, I made it.
I can
say made it
imagine
to
you
the
would
wedding.
be. I can imagine you would be a pretty killer wedding minister. Wes.
I got a lot of compliments.
Speaking
I
of
really
weddings, my old man
Oh,
got
yeah.
remarried this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Congrats
Congrats,
to
Charles.
Charles. Really
Carpenter,
nice
man.
too.
Dub C.
Dude,
Yep,
the Carpenters don't do anything halfway.
No.
If they rent out Charlotte Motor Speedway, they got the whole infield packed full of semis and rigs
Yeah.
or whatever.
Trying to make
Ricky
it feel
Smith
like
came, right?
home.
Yeah, I saw that
Yeah.
too.
Ricky Smith, Gene Fulton,
was
Robbie
even dancing.
Vandergriff.
He was dancing.
Ricky?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I saw a
I've
picture
seen
of him
Ricky
dancing.
dance before.
Yeah.
Ricky.
I've seen Ricky.
What about you, Dion?
I was at the Four Wides.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So
He was
Yeah,
working
baby.
for a living, JT.
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
get to golf and go to weddings like you guys. Just kidding. I went to a wedding 2 weeks ago.
It's wedding
Oh,
season.
my
man.
gosh.
I do have a crazy question for you guys, though, that I just feel like is pretty controversial. So,
Really?
yeah.
Okay,
get this.
I'm excited.
In a UFC regulated cage match, I know, Wes, you're a huge UFC guy.
Hand to
Who
God.
do you think would win in a UFC regulated cage match, octagon and everything? A silverback gorilla or a polar bear?
The polar bear's already been in the UFC, right? Back in the day. Remember that guy?
I'm sure.
Remember that when it was bare knuckle and he had to fight 3
I'm
times?
going polar bear.
I'm
Like,
going polar bear, man. I think sheer strength and like bears are scary, right? Like I actually had to have a serious conversation with
gorillas
my
are
daughter
scary.
Yeah, no
Dude.
shit.
about like you don't pet bears. Like we were in Branson, Missouri, and apparently bears are like a thing there. And literally, my daughter Sophia, God bless her, she's looking at the television and we're watching some bear show, and she's like, "Oh, bears look so sweet and cute." And I'm like, "No, never. They're not sweet. They're not cute."
You'd have to do
you
more
see a
research
bear
to find
run.
out, like, are polar bears like super aggressive and we just don't see it, or because we see them in zoos like
I
swimming
think
around or
polar
whatever?
bears are like the most vicious bear.
Really? Okay.
I would. They're.
I bet
huge.
if you piss
Like-
off a gorilla though, it might. I mean,
I think gorillas they have a lot, I'm thinking agility wise,
Mhm.
big time agility. I mean, a gorilla is
They
going to
have
go
thumbs.
up like
have thumbs.
spinning back kick off the fence. I can see it like kicking the fence, spinning
Oh my
around, full Jean-Claude Van Damme
Hey,
on
guys.
the polar bear. It'd be rough, bro.
I can't bear it any longer. Let's get this show started.
Send it.
Oh man.
The Wes Buck Show.
It's uncut. It's unfiltered. This is the show of shows. This is the biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred.
Speaking his mind.
I've never had a problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way.
Exploring hot topics.
Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do.
And spreading the gospel of drag racing.
I respect the history. I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing.
The Wes Buck Show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, April 6th, 2022. Excited to have you back for another wild and crazy episode of the Wes Buck Show. Thank you so much for being here. It's always an honor and a privilege to get to spread the gospel of drag racing right here on the World Wide Web with all of you sharing in the conversation, being part of it. Mike, JT, what's happening, guys? You doing good?
Doing
What's
good.
up, man?
man. I'm still just rocked from the polar bear versus gorilla conversation, to be honest.
Yeah, we're gonna have to touch on
racking
that.
my brain. I think we're gonna have to. There's the hard. I love the format we've kind of adopted with the show, to be honest with you guys, just like having these fun, lax conversations and diving into a variety of different topics. And it's fun to do the off the beaten path type of thing every once in a while, right? I mean, we talk almost exclusively about hardcore drag racing. So every once in a while, I think it's all right to do something different, man.
Man, got to have fun with it. Speaking of having fun, man, it looked like they had a lot of fun out there at the Four Wides this weekend. And the thing I want to touch on real quick just happened this morning. Ronnie Munn, who is known as Ronnie the limo driver on Howard Stern, if you're a Howard Stern fan and have followed that deal for a long time, he was a guest of Ron Capps this weekend. And he lives in Las Vegas. So I think that they're connected somehow, invited him out. They interviewed Ronnie on the TV broadcast, and then they were talking to Ronnie about it today on Howard's show live. And it was kind of a bit, they were giving him a hard time about wearing a Ron Capps t-shirt, said he looked like he was 12 years old.
Like, he looks like a NASCAR fan or something. Yeah.
So it was, and at the end of the day, it's like at least 30 minutes of Howard Stern talking about drag
the king
racing.
Of all media.
Right. The king of all media talking about drag racing. And then, of all things, Brian Loans calls in and gets through.
That's
and they
crazy,
interview
right?
Brian gives some color and some backstory to what they were picking on Ronnie because he gave such a horrible interview that they had to reshoot it and do a second one. And Brian was giving some of the backstory on that. And it was actually pretty hilarious.
So
Howard
who did
dives
So who did a bad interview? Ronnie did a bad interview at NHRA
at the track.
Oh, okay.
He said something like the first interview was, like, what are you doing here? How's your experience? And he said something like, well, I'm not here to talk about Howard Stern or something. And it like just set this bad tone. They were like, all right, can that? We got to redo this. So then they gave more of like a PC interview or whatever you want to say. And it was, Brian gave some of the backstory. It was actually hilarious, but it turned into basically Howard interviewing Brian about his broadcasting career and life. And, they kind of connected on this media or talking on the mic sort of shared experience that they have. And it ended up Brian getting interviewed randomly by Howard Stern. But it got me thinking, awesome. It got me thinking to myself, this never would have happened if Brian didn't take it upon himself to call into the Howard Stern show and see if he could get through to jump on this deal. And it's like taking that leap and making that happen.
Didn't you say he's talking about his voice and how great he was? And
yeah, that's what Howard said.
This is all Brian needs. Like, has anybody checked on Loans today? Has his head swollen to like beyond capacity? Like, we're gonna have a hard time.
We're never gonna get him on this show. We're never gonna get him on this show ever again. We can't afford it anymore.
Yeah, that was the last time a couple of weeks ago. First, he wins Drag Illustrated's Ambassador of the Year award.
Well,
right? I mean, the highest honor of all time.
Bestowed him with that honor, right?
That's true.
This guy calls into the Howard Stern show to see if he can get on there. Talk a little more drag racing on arguably the biggest radio show of all time, right?
And I truly believe that's when you're being an ambassador, right?
Yep.
I always tell people, like, it's easy, and this is a bit of a stretch, but like, it's easy to be a good dad at Disney World, right? Being a good dad is hard.
That's hard.
Well, it is, but like when you're doing fun stuff, right? When you're doing fun stuff, right? But it's hard to be a dad like through the week, the grind, putting kids to bed, getting them up early, right? Wiping butts and wiping noses. And I think that's kind of a classic example. It's easy to be a drag racing ambassador at the races. It's easy to do it when you're getting paid to do it or whatever, but it's when you choose to do it like Brian did. I mean, I'm sure NHRA didn't pay him for his time this morning.
No.
Right? That could have went awry. He could have gotten embarrassed or could have gotten made fun of.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot. Who knows what's going to happen on Howard Stern's show? Yeah, but he took it upon himself and put himself out there, man. He could have gotten roasted.
It could have been absolutely horrible. Brian actually reached out to Ronnie. I think Ron Capps and Brian both have either met him or, being fans of the show. Brian, I think, somehow was involved in getting Ronnie out to the track initially, and then he followed it up with this deal, which to me, it's just awesome. I used to love it as a kid. Anytime I saw like drag racing on TV or like involved in a commercial or something, it always gave me gave me goosebumps, right? Am I allowed to say that? Or
You're allowed to say
full
it.
body
I had
chills.
Gee,
Yeah.
there you go.
You can call
And
it
it's,
goosebumps.
but so to see Howard Stern or hear Howard Stern talking about drag racing was a pretty cool way to start the morning.
Dude, I mean, I really think that we've got to give Loans like a round of applause, because that being willing, I got to be honest, I know we're fortunate at this stage in the game to have like some sources close to the situation within NHRA and whatnot. And we've got our ear to the ground as well. And I know there have been multiple instances where drivers have like turned down PR opportunities where, hey, we need somebody to go on this radio show, or hey, we need someone to do this daytime talk show or this morning television show. And I know there have been a lot of pro level racers turn that stuff down, blow that stuff off. And when I see somebody like Brian Loans, who's, I mean, obviously it's his job and it's his life, and this industry is his everything. I think it's safe to say. But it's cool to see him willing to take matters into his own hands. How long have we been saying that, T? Like, take matters in your own hands. You cannot wait for someone else to shine a light on you. You can't wait for someone else to shine a light on our sport. The tools exist. And a lot of it's picking up the phone, right? I mean, he called and probably went through whatever rigmarole and
it's hard to get on any of those
or whatever.
It's hard to get on the
man.
local sports talk show, and he, regardless, he picked the phone up and dialed it and tried, and it worked.
I think it's awesome, man. Kudos to Brian Loans. And I'm with you. I get goosebumps anytime I see drag racing referenced. There was even a moment during the Formula One Grand Prix a couple weeks ago in Saudi Arabia where I can't remember where it was, but the announcers who do a fantastic job. Speaking of announcers who crush it, I don't know those guys, Mike. You might know their names.
The excitement, it's like an auctioneer or something on that first lap to try to
It's
say everything
man.
That's happening on that first lap, which is like where all the passing happens or chaos happens.
And I mean, they're so up on the tire that you can't help but be up on the tire. It's just like, holy crap, am I missing something? Because you guys are elevated, right? But they said the words drag racing. Like, I think it was like Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc were like coming out of a turn, and they were about to be side by side, and they're like, oh, it's looking like a drag race coming out of turn or whatever. And I'm like, yeah. And just, you know what I mean? It's just so funny. I remember like seeing any type of movie where there's a racing scene or any moment where drag racing permeates pop culture. It feels like a victory for me. And to hear our sport being talking about for whatever, a half hour, I got to listen to this. I haven't heard it yet. I got to,
go back and check it out. It's on this morning show.
We need to get it and post it for everybody. So
man, we need to like rip it off their page or whatever and post it, because I'd love to.
And
that's a huge victory. Yeah.
Howard Stern.
Yep. Good job, Brian.
Sirius XM writes us a cease and desist. Right.
Yeah.
We've had some moments like that. Wouldn't it be the first time?
It won't be the last.
Yeah, it won't be the last.
Speaking of this weekend, we had a big weekend out in Vegas for the NHRA 4-Wide Nationals. Brittany Force got the job done in Top Fuel. Ron Capps in Funny Car. His first win as team owner and as driver. Erica Enders in Pro Stock. Lots to talk about. The crowd and the energy out at the strip. You guys have any takes or strong takeaways from the weekend?
Man, Mike, we talked a little bit about this last week, but I do think we brought the heat on liking the 2-wide or 4-wide, which do you prefer? And I think it's safe to say that no matter how I feel about it, I'm on the record saying that I'm not a huge fan of 4-wide drag racing. I prefer I prefer the 2 cars side by side, mono gunfight type of deal. I want to see a duel on the 8th or quarter mile or 1,000 feet racing course. That's the way I like the stuff served up. I can't help it. But if we learned anything from this past weekend in Las Vegas, the 4-wide deal moves the needle, man. I mean, the fans, I wasn't there to like do a head count or anything, but looking at the crowd on Saturday, and by all accounts, we heard from Dion, our own teammates, Brett Underwood was out there as well. The place was packed out on Saturday. And I think that it's safe to say that the 4-wide format has kind of revitalized that spring Las Vegas event. And the fall race always seems to have a palpable energy. Like, you can feel it because the championship's coming down to the line. It's the second to last race. Historically, the Pro Mod series has ended there. The season has been decided there. So I think there's always enough storylines and enough, things going on that it's the second to last race of the year. I mean, it's a big moment, but the spring race just kind of fell flat. And this 4-wide format seems to have changed everything for them. So kudos to everybody involved. A huge tip of the cap, honestly, to Bruton Smith and family, Marcus Smith, Speedway Motorsports, everybody that's involved with the construction of these facilities. It started out at ZMAX Dragway in Concord, North Carolina. They continued chasing this 4-wide vision in Las Vegas, adding 2 more lanes to the luxurious strip at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and it's clearly paying dividends. I think it's going to ultimately beg the question of, should they run 4-wide at those deals always, exclusively? I think an argument can be made. Maybe we'll revisit that later in the show. I think one of the questions we had submitted kind of touches on this. But Mike, what was your take? I mean, there was a lot of killer performances, right? We saw Erica Enders. I have notes somewhere, but Erica Enders, 9 times she's gotten the job done in Las Vegas. I think she's the winningest professional drag racer in the history of Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Let's start with that, man. I mean, what better place to have a killer track record, right?
Yeah, she's always, I think, because that race, like you said, is usually the second to last race of the season. That's usually when she turns it on, as far as the clutch gene that we've talked about, and coming through there at the end to secure a world championship. We even saw her get that world championship in Las Vegas in 2020 due to Pomona not happening due to COVID. But a great event. And like you said about the 4-wide, even if we don't like it as drag racing purists or as competitors or fans of the sport, we have to realize what it does for the fans. And I'm with you. I think that, like we talk about venues all the time, if you've got 4 lanes, you should run them 4 lanes, 4-wide at both events. I know that I'm probably going to get tons of hate from on that from the racers out there, but I really think if you go back to this Vegas race in the fall, or if you go to the Charlotte race in the fall, and you see the difference in fan attendance, it would help sway you a little bit on that. But we'll see where they go with it. I think as time goes on and we get more used to this 4-wide deal, that it's something that should be on the table. The other, you talk about record performances, talked about Erica. How about Brittany Force going 338.00 miles per hour, second fastest top fuel pass ever, where she actually went 338.17 at the same track in the fall race in 2019. And we saw her go 337.75 at the previous race in Gainesville. So they've got something going on there.
I got like handwritten notes on this one, and they've definitely got, David Grubnick, right? The Aussie swinging for the fences pretty much every time they put that Monster Energy drink dragster in the beams. It's a cool, one of the things that I have enjoyed
home run
seeing,
hitting, man.
I love that they're literally swinging for the fences, man. And I think it's cool that he makes no bones about it. Like, they may knock the tires off, but they may also knock the scoreboards down. And I just think it's kind of a cool approach to drag racing. You see so many people, not so many people, but don't you guys think it's safe to say that we see people like lay one up or play safe a lot? If I had $1 for every time I heard somebody say 1 round at a time, we're just racing the racetrack, I get it, obviously.
I don't think you can do that anymore.
I don't think you can.
Listen to these stats from the Top Fuel final. The last 8 world champions were in the finals, 16 total championships between them. 4 of them in their first final of the year. 10 different drivers have been in a final round this season. And here's the list of drivers who have not been in a final. Leah, Doug Coletta, Sean Langdon, Josh Hart. And so you can't, laying up is out the window when you got this kind of
There's a bunch of points.
That's the 4th different winner also this year. So then that's what's making it so exciting.
We've always thought too that if Grubnick with his home run hitting, and then obviously the backing that team has, and then with Brittany, if she can get more consistent on her driving, which we saw that this weekend, this is what's going to happen. They're going to win races. It's no shock that she won this race this weekend. When they put all those packages together and all the stars align, they're going to be tough to beat.
Well, I mean, and the way I look at it, especially, and obviously I understand consistency, and you got to get more often than not, you got to get to the finish line under power to have a chance. And I get that approach. And it's difficult to argue against it. But also when it is the way that it is right now in Top Fuel, these are deep, shark-infested waters. How do you want to go out, right? I mean, personally, I kind of appreciate Grubby's approach. Like, hey, man, let's load this thing for bear, and if it strikes the tires at 300 feet, I'd rather that than get our doors blown off, right? I mean, How do you want to lose? And I, like, to your point, Mike, it's tough out there right now. And you may as well, I appreciate seeing a guy that's willing to get knocked out trying to knock someone else out, right? I mean, going back to UFC, not necessarily polar bears and silverback gorillas, but I think that's one of the things that has hurt mixed martial arts is guys not fighting to win, but fighting not to lose. Right. I mean, and we've seen it happen where guys used to go in that ring, and before the sport was as big as it is now, they were trying to make a name for themselves. They were out there swinging for the fences. They were trying to win the fight however they could as quick as possible. Now the stakes have gotten higher. There's all these major sponsorships. There's logos all over the mat, right? Everybody's wearing fancy ass gear. And now you go out there and you're timid and you're playing to go rounds and you're trying just to win the fight, eke it out if you have to on the judges' scorecards. And maybe, I think it's impacted the sport negatively.
Maybe that's what Torrance is doing. He's leading in points right now, right?
Right, and he hasn't won a race.
And I think what it's been since the start of 2019, where he's gone 4 races without a win, but he's actually leading in points.
What's that say about this class right now, man?
And the consistency of that team of his as well.
Yep.
It's crazy that he's leading the points and hasn't won a race. And we called this at the beginning of the year, and whoever is the last man standing this year, would never ever in my wildest dreams try to diminish anybody's past accomplishments or anything that's happened over the course of the last few years. But let's be honest, whoever wins the NHRA Top Fuel World Championship this year is the real deal. I mean, you're doing it against a dozen former champions, the toughest the Top Fuel Eliminator has been in years and years and years. It's fun, man. It's exciting to see so many different people in the mix.
It's coming to fruition. We talked about this, I think back in December and January, what we were looking forward to with the Top Fuel class in 2022, and it's coming to fruition. It's exciting to see that. I think it's cool too. They're doing a lot of these interviews, and they're posting these videos. NHRA media is during and after the race. Brittany Force mentioned in one of her interviews that she's trying something different on the starting line, and it seems to have worked. So I love hearing little nuggets of information of what people are doing to try different things, different strategies, and just always working to get better.
It is cool. And you're going to have to at this point in time, right? And we also see that it's so hard to stay in that zone. One of the things that kind of stood out to me this past weekend was, I think Mike Salinas, maybe in E1, had a 300 something light.
Yeah,
he's been a machine since late last year, headed into this year. He's been really, really good on the lights. I mean, I think I called him last week one of the best levers in the category, and he rewarded me with that 300 light in the opening stanza there. But it just goes to show you that you can't really rest on your laurels, and you can't just assume that you're going to be good every time. It's nice to see in some ways, right? Like that human element plays such a significant role in our sport. I really love to see that. I want to ask you guys a question before we switch gears, or ask you guys a question. That 338 mile an hour pass that you talked about earlier from Brittany, we talked about 1,000-foot racing, quarter mile racing, and all that last year. Correct me if I'm wrong, or actually help me get some clarity on this. Are we trying to slow these cars down, or what exactly are we trying to accomplish? Because we shortened the racing distance by 320 feet, and these things are still going almost 340. Like I found in 2017, Robert Height went 339.87, like basically 340 miles an hour in Sonoma. What are we really we're clearly not accomplishing the goal. Like if the goal by reducing the racing distance was to slow the cars down, we have failed. Agreed? Or what? I mean,
yeah. I think that part of the initial reasoning for 1,000-foot racing has gone out the window. I mean, I don't think you can argue that it gives them another 300 feet to shut down, and especially in some of the tracks that are short. However, we've talked about this too. I feel like 1,000-foot racing at a place like Englishtown, it was I don't want to say knee jerk, but it was made with those types of facilities in mind that are already a little bit short. Pomona is not overly long, to give that extra stopping distance, and Englishtown's gone now. And as we start to lose these facilities and these tracks, I've struggled to think of more than a couple of tracks on tour that are quote unquote short. I mean, all of them are built up to the modern standard and have modern shutdown. I don't know that the argument for adding more shutdown is valid anymore either. The other argument that we've always heard about 1,000 foot is tires.
Right.
Tires coming apart. Tires were not withstanding that last 300 feet of the track. But, and maybe someone smarter than me can educate us on this, but if the car is going 340 miles per hour at 1,000 foot, is it not under the same aerodynamic and speed forces that it would be if it were going 340 at a quarter mile? Maybe length of time or something like that. I don't know. But these, the tires aren't coming apart, thank God, like they used to. I mean, tires coming apart used to be a scary issue. So I'm sure the tires have changed. I'm sure Goodyear has addressed that, and the current tire has solved a lot of that. But my point is, we're getting down to just a couple of things left as far as the reasoning for 1,000 foot racing.
I mean, if the decision was made, and I believe the NHRA put out a statement on it, and I can't remember if I have it in front of me or not, or if it's in our notes here somewhere or not, but basically to reduce the number of explosions, right? And increase the amount of shutdown that existed.
Cost is the other thing I didn't talk about. It was
there was a multitude of things that they were trying to address. And I guess like I'm yet to hear of anybody tell me that drag racing is any more affordable. Pro level nitro drag racing is any more affordable today than it was. And it seems like we blow up plenty of stuff. Bodies are flying through the air.
If you've got these cars, you're pushing them hard enough to go 340 in 300 less feet. Are you not pushing the equipment just as hard or harder than you did when you were going quarter mile?
I think it was Don Prudhomme who said he appreciated, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but he appreciated the effort to make racing safer and whatnot, but it's just the nature of drag racers to shorten the fuse, right?
We see it in all types of drag racing though. You know, you make real changes and the guys get better. Across the board, we've seen it in every style of racing there is.
No, I mean, and it's, I don't know that there's any way to fully curtail the innovative or stunt the innovative spirit that exists in the sport of drag racing. These are guys and gals are going to find a way to go faster. There's no
technology
doubt about
gets better. And,
everything gets
tires
better.
get better. Everything gets better. Right.
Defined almost
a lot of that
entirely by the quality of tire, right?
Well, think about it. A decision that was made in 2008, also with charged emotions after tragically losing one of our stars. Technology maybe has addressed some of these concerns. And
it's true too.
And I could be wrong. And someone, again, that knows this stuff in stone can tell us probably. But I feel like at that point in time, it was sold to us by NHRA or by the powers that be that I think the racers had a big hand in this, that this is what they felt like they had to do right now as a potentially temporary measure to fix this issue. But I feel like it's just basically accepted as permanent at this point. And I don't see any way that they undo it, but I don't know that it was meant to be permanent at first.
I don't think it was meant to be. I saw
in
lots of quotes that were like, this is the solution for now. This will be, I think there were multiple instances where I saw like, for now, in this moment, this is what makes sense. But it felt to me, and it still to this day seems to me like an effort at some point in time, the time and energy, the money, the resources that are going to be required are going to have to be invested into figuring out how to change the combination enough that we can still see 300 something pop up on the scoreboards. But I mean, I don't know if if our intentions were to make racing safer and have these cars not going 340 miles an hour, man, we're there. We're right back there. The racetracks are shorter. I don't know. It's just an interesting thing, to be honest. Again, like I don't necessarily have the answer, but it does beg the question, how far and how long are we going to let this go? Right. I mean, it's
right.
a really
it kind of
interesting
seems like it's one of these things like accepted at this point, and they kind of hope that you don't bring it up because it's just what we've known. There's a whole generation of racers that don't know anything other than 1,000 foot nitro racing.
And maybe that's, I mean, and to play devil's advocate or kind of see the other side of it, maybe that's okay. I mean, how many times have we talked to racers that never race with a clutch? I remember interviewing Jay Cox, PDRA Pro Nitro Superstar, right here on this show. And he's like, man, I've never ran a car with a clutch. Well, like, that seems impossible to imagine racing, having no experience, being a pro mod superstar and having never raced with a clutch. But that's just where we are, right? And maybe we're just flapping our gums for no apparent reason.
Right.
Because
Maybe
this is just
we're the
what
only
it
ones
is.
on this soapbox.
Yeah, we let them figure it out. Let them go faster. Hell, I don't give a shit. I mean, they'll pull them back when they need to, right? I mean, they should.
Well,
So,
no, the answer, I mean,
Yeah.
the answer would be going back to a quarter mile, but under vastly restricted rules. But that's where the problem comes in. That's expensive.
Yep.
And then that throws a
I
curve
saw
at everybody. And there's no doubt that they would, if you limited all these parameters that we've talked about in the past, they would figure it out within a year or two and have it right back where they wanted it.
Probably. I mean, I think that you would have to find a way to dramatically reduce the amount of power these cars make. And it's tough because you still want big old header flames and you want them popping and cackling.
You want to be able to say 11,000 horsepower.
You want to be able to say all these crazy things that we know have been part of the promotional marketing mix for the NHRA for a long time. But I just wonder what would happen in like the NFL if they decided tomorrow that, hey man, we're just going to knock 25 yards off the field moving forward. Like, it's a little sketchy out there. Guys are getting a big run at it. You know, we feel like if we tighten the
Arena
field up,
League, baby.
Yeah, I mean, look how popular Arena League football is. I don't even know. I can't name a team. I don't even know where one's at. Isn't that all in Canada? I mean,
there was the St. Louis had the Battlehawks a while back. You know,
Yeah, how'd that work out?
They just play it like your local
that was like
convention
fun,
center or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't want drag racing, you know, relegated to convention center status, right? You know what I mean? Like I mean, I don't want JT to be the only one who knows about it, you know, because it kind of seems like that's the case with arena football.
JT's just he's you know how these like betting addicts get. He's got money on the arena game that's happening today in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, you know a guy, you know, knows a guy. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, I just really think that I'm really hung up on it. I am, and maybe we're the only ones who gives a shit. I don't know, but it's like quarter mile. I don't know, man. I do think it's something worth talking about, and it's something worth exploring. I understand that maybe the consensus ultimately is there's no way to do it. Maybe that's what it boils down to. But man, I do think it's worth talking about, and I'm glad to have the conversation, and I feel like it's a conversation that needs to be had, man. Let's touch one more thing here on Funny Car as far as before we wrap up this Las Vegas conversation. How about Ron Capps getting that win, right? First win, I guess, I thought he won earlier in the season. All this stuff, It's so crazy how much stuff's going on. But Ron Capps' first ever win as a team owner and driver, right? Yep. That seems like a big deal to me, man. I think we were all wondering at the beginning of the season how many of these guys that were transitioning into the team owner role would be able to juggle all these different things and new pressures and nuances and new situations, things that they maybe didn't have to deal with in the past. Would it affect their driving style? Would they be more cautious than they historically have been? Ron seems to be rocking and rolling.
I feel like he's the only team that didn't have any carryover from last season as well. So that's pretty big and pretty awesome.
Or I think it meant turnover, but I think it's because I think it's the same team basically that he had last year under new ownership. Correct?
I don't know.
He didn't have any carryover. Yeah.
Oh, so he's got like a whole new team?
I think so.
Holy crap!
That's what Josh told us.
No joke. Well, listen, I wanted to think that everybody would handle it exceptionally well, but being a business owner myself, and you guys know the grind that these things can be and how you have to weigh all these different things, and you're dealing with all these personalities now, and it's when you have a singular focus and all you have to do is drive a race car. And I'm not minimizing it, but the fact that you're able to focus exclusively on that, it's such a leg up. It really is. And when you have to do that and you're expected to compete at a really high level, but you also have to now deal with all your sponsors, deal with team dynamics, ordering parts, dealing with shortages and all the issues that many of us in the world are facing right now, it definitely changes things. And you have to wonder how everybody's going to handle it. And it would appear that Ron Capps is passing the test with flying colors. I mean, and he also, have you guys noticed
the right people in the right places, right?
He seems genuinely excited too.
Yeah.
Like, because I also thought to myself, this may be something that reinvigorates a handful of these guys. Like, it was kind of the same old. You start to go through the motions, and now there's a little bit more of a challenge. I know personally, I love a good challenge. I kind of joke sometimes that I have a conquest deal. Like I have a conquest like condition where I just love to like beat the game. Whatever the game is, I want to beat it. I want to beat level up as quick as possible. And I think that you can kind of see Ron Capps enjoying this conquest in front of him.
And that's we just clarified with Josh is no turnover from last year. It's the same team he had from last year, but just under his ownership. And that team obviously won the championship last year. And I feel like Ron, I mean, he's been at it as long as anybody at this point besides Force, really. And he's getting better. I feel like he's hitting his stride. The last couple of years have been his best years, in my opinion. You know, it's been sort of up and down for him a little bit. He's kind of been that guy that you felt like, when is he going to break through?
He was like a perennial bridesmaid, is what I would say.
Like he was always like he's hit another level, and he is the man to beat in that class right now.
You know, it's funny because Dion, our producer, threw a question in our group chat about, you know, do you think Brittany Force is there a potential for Brittany to become a real deal drag racing legend like her father? And I'm going to kind of take that question, but rephrase it on this one. What kind of impact is Ron Capps? Could he has the gift of gab. He's got a personality. He's good looking dude, clean cut, got big sponsorship. He's been in all these commercials, right? You go into a Napa every once in a while, you'll see like a cardboard cutout of the dude.
He may be the most visible.
He may be
NHRA drag racers. He's been through that Napa partnership, like you said, cutouts, branding, TV commercials that he's been involved in, and the way they activate that partnership has put him front and center.
I think I love a sponsor like Napa, and shout out to those guys. Maybe we can get them involved with the show, because I love when brands get involved in a sport and really take ownership, right? Like they're putting these things to work there, because we oftentimes will say this to racers all the time. Like, you can't just put a sticker on your car, but that goes both ways. A sponsor can't just put a sticker on a car or throw a logo on a fire suit and think the job is done. Like, hey, we sponsored this guy, hope something good comes from it. You can't do that. You've got to activate that sponsorship, and you've got to activate that investment. And it would appear to me that Napa, I mean, they just crush it, in my opinion. I've seen funny cars on the side of Napa delivery trucks. I've seen Capps on the side of that stuff. They've included him in all their marketing. There's been all this crossover, having Ron show up at a NASCAR race when Waltrip's racing a car, whatever, and all these different opportunities that they've embraced to kind of introduce different audiences and different motorsports audiences to Ron Capps. I think it's paying dividends. And I wonder, I've often said that John Force has been like that. He's like the center. He's the pole holding up the circus tent, right? And I know that Ron Capps is no sort of young man, right? But if there's anybody that's kind of establishing themselves, in my opinion, as someone who can carry the water or carry the load in the inevitable moment when John Force decides to hang it up, Ron Capps is definitely one of those guys. I mean, I don't know how much racing Ron wants to do, how long he wants to do this, but being that he bought the team, I would have to believe he's seeing several years. I mean, he's invested.
Right, you're invested.
I think
now.
He's next man up. You know, last year, I think Matt Hagan, obviously, there's several guys in the funny car ranks.
I mean, Hagan won Gainesville.
Yeah. I mean, there's several guys that have juice, in my opinion, that can bring some spark to it. But I just think Capps, man, he ticks a lot of boxes, bro.
What's crazy is that we talked about these new team owners and seeing how long it would take for them to get going. And we know these are well-funded, well-staffed, well-equipped teams as far as Tony Stewart and Ron Capps' team. But it's cool to see two new teams technically get wins in the first 4 races of the season.
It's pretty exciting, man. And let's take a minute here real quick and kind of pay some bills, if you don't mind. Guys, I'd like to remind each and every one of you that the Wes Buck Show is made possible by way of our friends at Stroud Safety. Stroud Safety is known for their top quality racing safety equipment, from drag chutes and seatbelts, gloves and blankets, everything 100% made in America. Log on to stroudsafety.com/Wes to let them know that we sent you. Some great guys up there in Oklahoma City, Tommy Cunningham and company. Incredible people, incredible ambassadors for the sport of drag racing. They do a ton for our sport. Please make sure that you support the companies that support the sport of drag racing, and of course the Wes Buck Show. Guys, what else do we have? I know we've got a couple.
Pro Stock.
Did you see?
we didn't even
touch on Pro Stock a little bit.
And I'll tell you, did you see the drive that bitch back video and the emotion in Erica's face on that deal. I mean, we're always saying, show us more emotions, show us more emotion. And she delivered on that one, man.
You know what? How big of a deal has the drive that bitch back thing become?
Is there a big deal? A lot of people are doing it now,
It's becoming a thing. Like,
hell yeah,
it's already a thing. Like, let me correct myself. It's a thing. I'm surprised we don't see even more of it. To be honest with you guys, I would like to see more of it. I thought about it when I was watching the video as well, T. I go, I wonder, I was watching as Brittany Force's car was in like in the background, right? They're watching as her, and Erica had to cross over in front of them. And I thought, I wonder if they're jealous that they can't like fire their stuff up and drive it back.
She's
to
like,
because I think
there goes Erica driving the car back.
They need like a smaller motor, like a trolling motor, like on a boat. You don't want to fire up your big motor, so you fire up the trolling motor,
the junior motor.
Yeah.
But I mean, I really do. I saw like all of Brittany Force's crew are just like watching, like, oh, wish we could do that, and maybe they don't care. I don't know, but it does. It's pretty cool, man. She's rolling through the pits, whacking the throttle for the fans. It's such a incredible
giving
thing.
all kinds of looks. There's like fans cheering, and there's like other teams glaring.
Other teams like taking down their awnings, stopping to clap.
And you'll see teams. Yeah, you'll see teams come out, to the pit road, and cheer her on as she's coming by. And I think
there's some people like, really what's going on? And some other teams, like maybe like a top alcohol team, is like trying to figure out what's happening here. They're like got their trailer door up. So it's kind of a cool,
and like, shit, we're doing that next time.
Yeah. If you've ever been a part of it or seen it happen, it's actually pretty cool when she comes rolling through there.
It is, man. And let's be honest, right now,
it just sounds good.
And there's nothing that sounds like a 500-inch Pro Stock engine. No. Like, that is the greatest drag racing sound, in my opinion. Like a 500-inch Pro Stock car coming out of the water, that is the sweetest song.
Going through the gears at Bristol.
Oh, true.
Listening to it from the top end.
That's a good song tune. That's a sweet tune, Mike. That's a sweet tune right there, man. But what do you think about, I love analogies, right? That's Erica's end zone dance. Right?
Yeah, it is.
So I wish people had more of those. Like, drag racing needs that stuff, right? Because people latch onto that shit big time. And I think back to when the Coletta guys would do the mosh pit deal on the starting line. Do they still do that? I mean, I'm waiting. When Doug Coletta inevitably wins a couple races in a row, I'm calling it here. He's going to go on a run in 2022. There's no doubt in my mind. You can't. He's one of the best to ever do it in terms of driving, and he's got the greatest crew chief in the history of the known universe, Alan Johnson, turning the screws. No doubt in my mind that he's going to win a few of them this year. I think he's going to compete for a championship. They've had a rough start to the year, kind of new team blues, I would say, in my opinion, changing the way they do things. But I hope we get to see that mosh pit again. I want to see some more of this stuff. And maybe it's just more people driving their cars back. I'm cool with that. But I would like to see some more of these victory dances, winner's circle celebrations, some more of these end zone dances pop up in the sport of drag racing. Because it's great social fodder, right? I mean, look at how well those videos perform. I bet there's not an action clip from this past weekend in Vegas that has more views than Erica starting her car up and driving it back to the pits. I bet there's not one wheelie or record run or any other thing that's been posted on social since Vegas that has more views than Erica's car being driven back to the pits.
Carl Edwards used to do it in NASCAR.
Yeah, I was going to say
that. He had the backflip, and everybody loves seeing it, right?
Kyle Busch doesn't Kyle Busch take a bow, stand up on his car door and take a bow because he knows everyone is booing him because he's the villain and he buys into it. That's what we need to see more of.
Well, like Conor McGregor, when at the beginning of his fights, he'd do the Billy strut, like Vince McMahon would do. And it's all that stuff makes a difference. And it actually, there's a great kind of wraparound moment here where it's being willing to put yourself out there. Very similar to what Brian Loans did by ringing the phone at Howard Stern's place, putting yourself out there like that. That's when the magic happens. And it's an uncomfortable area, right? Because JT and I know how many things can go awry when you go live or shoot a video inside of a car. Like, we took my Corvette out that time and I was like, JT's like, let's take your car out and give everybody a ride. And I slammed that thing into second gear and break both axles simultaneously and get to go live, be live on Facebook while broken down on the side of the road.
He was embarrassed. And I was like, what do you be embarrassed about? It's awesome. I mean,
this is good content.
I was massively, right? But I mean, that type of stuff
happens to everybody. You know?
I mean, there was a moment actually when Erica kind of gave somebody a glare or something. I think, because they were like in her way or something in the video.
Yeah,
and I thought
move.
that's those, but you're kind of running the risk, and you got to give them credit because that thing could also kick a rod out of. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, this mechanic. I had this conversation with my dad this morning. Hot rod shit, mechanical stuff breaks. It can be the best engine, the best parts and pieces, the best everything. When you're doing to them what we do to them, they can break. It's going to happen. And I just think it's cool that she's willing to put herself out there. The team's willing to let her do it. It's and they're willing to let her do it despite whatever setbacks it could be. Like, I think crew chiefs, by and large, are the ones that shut down John Force's monster burnouts, right? Because it was made the car hard to tune or whatever. And I get it because that's still happening on the track and inside the confines of competition. But it still sucks when we make these concessions and stop doing the cool things because in the name of performance, right? Because it's all these extra stuff. It's the big burnouts. It's the drive back to the pits. That's how we got here, right? And we can't forget what got us to the dance in the first place, man.
How about the lights these guys, as a whole, that everybody's cutting? And especially the young guys. I mean, crazy, right?
Oh, dude,
run through those for us. We got a list of the young guys with the lights.
I've got this, and shout out to Drag Illustrated senior editor Josh Hatchett for helping us with all these notes, man. But the real standout to me was Christian Quadra.
Amazing.
Unbelievable. I don't know if this has happened.
We saw this guy doing this in Orlando at our race and went to the finals at our race. Wasn't a fluke, man. This guy, now he's got power underneath him. He's got elite horsepower. These cars are the Quadra family is legit, and I think he had a 001 on Erica at our race.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had a 001, beat her on a whole shot. Yeah. But I mean, he went 001 and E1, which I think is interesting because, man, being that up on the wheel for the first round of eliminations, right? I mean, those are ones that kind of barely.
Well, it's not really. It's like the first and second round of eliminations.
Yeah, it is, man.
If you think about it, when it's four wide.
When it's four wide, so he goes 001. He goes 001 in the first round, goes 006 in E2, and then in the final goes 005. Kudos. I mean, let's give it up to Christian Quadra, man. I mean, this kid's an animal. And like you said, Mike, now that he's got a hot rod, now that he's got the elite performance under the hood and he's got some big power, I think it's only a matter of time before we see that orange Mustang in the winner's circle.
I saw something where a set screw came out of his throttle blade on the throttle body.
Oh, is that? Yeah, I saw that too. There was some controversy around that, right?
Had that not happened, not happened, man, I don't know. I haven't looked at all the numbers, but it would have been certainly extremely tight. Yeah, they're for real. I think when we saw them win and runner up at our race in 20, was it 2021?
2021.
Yeah, 2021.
I can't keep the year straight. Yeah, 2021. I think it was that was like the most success they had at that point in a pro stock car. And here they are this year making strides.
2020,
so cool
wasn't it?
No,
2021.
2020 was the iconic Jeg Coughlin versus Greg Anderson final round,
which I think will go down in history as one of the greatest drag racing final rounds of all time. I mean, holy moly. I mean, holy crap.
Then they both run like a 47 something.
Bonkers, man.
And Jeg had a little better light and won the race.
Yeah, it got the deal done. But no, Pro Stock, I can't really say enough. This is probably a good moment to just talk about how strong NHRA professional drag racing is right now. The NHRA Camping World Drag Racing Series just looking great. This is headed into what, the fifth race of the season. It's just exciting to see this many storylines. I mean, we didn't even touch on all the Supra talk, right? JR Todd's having some struggles. We saw Alexis DeJoria score the first final round appearance for the Toyota Supra body. We got Hagen winning races. We got Ron Capps doing well as a team owner. It's just a great time for the sport of drag racing right now. And it's to think about how far we've come in a relatively short amount of time. It was just a couple of years ago, we were all bemoaning short fields and what's going to happen. And oh my God, is this the end? And here we are with more pro-level teams and we hardly know what to do with. And some of the heaviest hitters, you talked about it in Top Fuel, Leah, Doug Coletta, Sean Langdon, Josh Hart, none of those guys have been to a final yet. Steve Torrance hasn't won a race yet in 2022. This is a really, really fun moment for the sport of drag racing. And I'm glad, man. I think there's more eyeballs on the sport right now than there ever has been. And it's cool when those things are paired together. We're having incredible on-track action, all these incredible storylines, and this massive audience. Thank God for it, man, because it would be tough to have these big moments, these big visibility moments when we're having those short field days. So it's nice to see the stars and moon aligning, if you will.
Yep. What do you think about the schedule? We talked a little bit about this, how they've got to go from Pomona to Phoenix to Gainesville to Vegas, back out west to Vegas, and then they start working their way back through Houston,
That's crazy.
Charlotte. But do you not think that, is there any way to get Pomona? Well, I think I maybe just answered my question as I'm talking out loud. With Phoenix gone in the future after next year, do you think that they would move this Vegas race to possibly around that Phoenix date and then prevent these guys from having to go west to east and back west?
Is there any reason not to that you guys can come up with it off the top of your head?
I think we just went ahead and just did
Solve
that for NHRA. Just go ahead and pencil that in.
But I mean, I can't identify any reason not to do it. The only
makes too much sense, though.
Yeah,
you're exactly right. It makes too much
really
sense.
Right.
A, and B, they're going to replace that race. I don't really want them to, and I know we talked about this last week.
But if it's an East Coast race or something else, then it needs to fit in somewhere else on the schedule. Yeah,
I think it would be a mistake. I really do, man.
Well, Gainesville has to be like that second week of March. So you really got like a window from whenever you have Pomona, which is what, mid-February?
Yeah, so like this third week of February.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think you're right. If you go from Pomona to Vegas and before you head west, that would make a whole lot of sense. But I don't know if they want to replace that race, where are they going to replace it out west? If they're going to replace that,
I don't think there is anywhere.
I don't either. I think you're going to have to replace it in Texas or on east. I don't know where else you would. I mean, you can't really go anywhere in the Midwest that time of year because the weather's too dicey. Is it freaking snowing in Missouri right now, JT? I think it probably is.
It did last Thursday. Yeah.
You know, I mean, in Texas, it's weird. I mean, yesterday it was 94 here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and today it's like 70. So I don't know. I don't know where they would go. I don't know where they're going to replace that. I mean, I know there are some tracks that are jockeying to get a national event, and I think we're going to see some changes on the schedule in the relatively near future, but I just don't know where they're going to add one. The only way they can replace Arizona, in my opinion, is they're going to have to go to a track for a second time. They're going to have another repeat second stop. And which one of these tracks does that make sense? I mean, looking down through the list here, I don't think you can go to St. Louis in March, personally.
No, right. Well,
I don't think
the
you can
weather's
go.
Really bad then, usually.
I mean, you could probably go to. You can't go to Charlotte because you already go there twice, right? I don't think you'd want to. Dallas is really the only one on my list. I've got the schedule here in front of me, and I'm going. I don't think you can go to Ohio. You don't want to go to I mean, I guess maybe you could go to Sonoma.
Yeah.
You know, you could go to Sonoma. And
isn't the weather vastly different when you go just that little bit north in California, especially early in the year? I'm sure.
And so I think, would you guys agree? I mean, I think you're right, Mike. Moving the Vegas race is great. And I hope that they'd make a decision like that. But I don't know that. I don't know where you get that 20-second stop, right? I mean, I think this deal is screaming because we're going to lose. Atlanta's gone, right? So it's already gone off the schedule. Houston will be gone after this, a week from now or whatever. So I don't know where those races get added. I really don't. It's kind of an interesting, fun thing to see. It'll be fun to see what happens, right? I mean, golly, and it happens fast. I don't know about you guys, but it's hard to believe that we're already 4 or 5 races into the NHRA season.
I know, right?
Like, holy moly, Batman. I don't know.
I agree.
All right, one more. Let me keep paying bills here while I've got the world's attention. I want to make sure we're trying to make some money, right? We got to try to earn a living out here. Let me take a minute to remind each and every one of you that the Wes Buck Show is brought to you by our friends at Redline Synthetic Oils. Shout out to our buddy Mark Beatty and the gang. Redline has a reputation with racers and hardcore enthusiasts for creating products that perform and protect better than any on the market. And they've been doing it since 1979. Whether it's your race car, your tow rig, your motorcycle, or your lawnmower, when you think about lubricants, you need to think about Redline. For more information, log on to redlineoil.com. What do you got for us, Mike? I think there's a whole list of questions that have arrived in our inbox. And I do want to remind everybody briefly, if you have a question or if you have a talking point, you have a thought, you have something, you have your own hot take, send it to us. We love to see this stuff, and we're going to continue to encourage you guys to be a part of this conversation. If you have something you want to say, a point you want to make, or a question you want to ask, shoot them to us at wes@dragillustrated.com, mike@dragillustrated.com, JT@dragillustrated.com. Send them to one of us, all of us, whatever you want to do, but we love hearing from you guys. Mike, what do you got?
For sure.
Man, PDRA's this weekend. Can't forget that. Season opener, PDRA, Galat Motorsports Park. Going to be a huge deal, man.
East Coast Nationals,
East
baby.
Coast Nationals. And we said PDRA had their best season last year.
I think
I'm looking to see them build on that this year. What are you looking forward to? We've got a few new faces in new rides and in new classes. Some of the things, first we got to start with the Buck Brothers Cavalier.
Buddy. Yeah, buddy.
Recently got repainted. I saw
looks
Eddie
good,
Buck giving us some spy shots from the booth. Looking good, man.
I'm
Big Daddy Warlock.
I don't know what's up with these names. Nobody knows.
Your dad just comes up with that off the top of his head.
I think my dad just like says words and then he gets them painted on the side of race cars.
Dads
I
do
love
that.
it, man.
Yeah.
I love it.
I don't
Totally
totally get it. Like he's got one race car. He's got what is it, 67 or 68 Camaro? I think it's 67 Camaro. He's got like a 67 Camaro that's like a steel roof and quarters car, like a back half car that says Warlock on the door, and it said Warlock on it since like the 70s or some shit, right? I mean, forever. And I thought that made sense, but he really he's hooked on Warlock, you know. So I think that this is like the faster car. So it's Big Daddy Warlock. I don't know what the hell it means. Like it's not like we have like a deep history of wizards and magicians and warlocks in our family or something. I
knew it was going to be either some great long tradition story or now my dad just, comes up with that randomly. I knew it was going to be one of those two things.
He was going to put, I correct me if I'm wrong, Dad, and he'll probably call me immediately, but I believe at one point it was going to be Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, I think was going to be the name on the car. And then he decided to go with Big Daddy Warlock. He did not
fit that other one on a t-shirt.
Yeah, couldn't fit the other one on a t-shirt.
Too many decals.
Dude, I got to tell you guys, my personal opinion is the hottest thing happening in PDRA is Extreme Pro Stock. We got John Montecalvo. This was pretty big news that for some reason, I don't know why, we haven't really touched on.
Before we jump to that, we got Junior Ward is driving Big Daddy Warlock, right?
Correct. Of Sonny's Racing Engines fame. He's a very accomplished racer, right? We've seen him in a multitude of different classes, running his own car, driving cars for other guys. He's going to make his debut driving for my dad, the Buck Brothers Racing Cavalier. It won't be, the car's not back all the way put together yet, so it won't be this weekend in Galat.
Oh, okay.
I believe they'll be in Virginia. But I know John Montecalvo is coming back out.
Sounds like Charles Carpenter Racing. Oh, y'all gonna be ready for the first race of the year? Nah, man, can't make it. We'll be at the second one.
No, I mean I got to be honest with you, man.
Are you chasing boys this year? Yeah, gonna try. Gonna make the first race.
We need to win the first one we go to, if we're going to compete. But I'm anxious to see how those guys do, man. My dad's so fired up about this stuff. It's really cool. It's also, there's people coming out of the woodwork. Like I keep saying, Montecalvo, I was worried we were going to lose him. Like the sport of drag racing was going to lose him. He was going to retire or something. Seeing him jump, it's a little weird seeing him in a Ford, but it's cool to see him partnering up with
Montecalvo Roy Hill partnership there.
To be honest, you probably know better than I do, or more than I do.
I don't, man. It was a surprise for me too. You talk about polar opposites there, John Montecalvo and Roy Hill. They're gonna have to have translators or something for John to understand what Roy's saying and vice versa.
Oh, I just hope we get to see Roy Hill in a headset, hollering. I really do. That's some of the greatest sights and sounds that exist in the sport of drag racing.
Unless you're on the other end of the headset and trying to drive a pro stock car.
Oh my God. Can you imagine having Roy in your ear while you're like trying to drag race? Oh my goodness. You know what? But I've had a lot of people tell me that he's actually like a really, really good teacher and he can be very encouraging and stuff, albeit rough around the edges. I think everybody loves Uncle Roy. I know I do, but I think I saw a post, John Montecalvo made a post on social that he had sold his Camaro that he's had considerable success with, right? And I was worried, like, okay, is a new car coming? Is he getting out of it? And it was a cryptic post. And then within like 48 hours, he's making this post like, well, maybe things are changing and maybe I'll be back out, but in a different car. And I kind of heard through the grapevine, got a couple texts, got a couple calls that he was going to take over driving. He was going to team up with Roy Hill and drive the car. And I think obviously he's got a truck and trailer. It looks like he's going to haul the car to the races. So I'm sure it's some business arrangement where, Roy has the benefit of having a really good driver in the car, and he's got a truck and trailer. John Montecalvo's got a truck and trailer. So he's probably going to transport the car to and fro the races.
Roy
and the benefit,
some paving work done at Roy
probably.
Hill's.
Yeah. And the benefit for John is that he's driving somebody else's car and he doesn't have that expense or whatever. So I'm sure it'll be a successful endeavor. And I'm just glad to see John.
Two of the OGs, man.
Yeah.
Of Mountain Motor Pro Stock Racing, really, to teaming together. That's going to be awesome. We also got Young Guns, the Voss brothers. Yep. They're going to be in the mix. So that's exciting to see.
I think it's cool to see. For me, what's it say about what pro stock means to people that like young guys like Corey and Dylan Voss, like, they've had success in Outlaw 632, and you would think the natural evolution would see them end up in Pro Nitrous, right? And it's cool that they've gone to such great lengths and worked so hard to arrive in Mountain Motor Pro Stock. I think it's a fantastic thing. They're going to be a great addition to the class. I think they'll run well. And they'll be in the mix. Those guys are racers. They'll work on the car. They'll make changes. And I'm genuinely excited to see them in the mix and do it with their own equipment, right? I mean, we've seen them racing in Mountain Motor Pro Stock a little bit, dabbling, driving other guys' cars and whatnot. But to see them out there on a consistent basis, that's really, really, really exciting, competing for a championship. And again, Pro Boost and Pro Nitrous, I think we're going to have a lot of the usual suspects. We're going to have a lot of the, same characters. And that's exciting in its own right? Because you have some consistency and you can see these stories play out over the course of time and who's going to, change things up and who's going to sneak in and surprise everybody. But I think the hottest thing that's going right now in PDRA, by all accounts, is Extreme Pro Stock, man.
I can't argue with you. But
there's some rumors down there too.
I think Pro Boost is the second hottest. If you want to go next, I think we see a lot of people switching over to that. Pro Nitrous, I feel like you said, is a lot of the usual suspects. I don't know of any new combinations or new cars that are going to be over there this year, but I'm sure we'll see some at Galat. One thing in Pro Boost I'm excited about seeing, actually, too, Derek Brown, top sportsman racer who had a horrific crash at Virginia last year in his really badass pro charged late model Camaro, would knock the whole body off the thing. Luckily, he didn't get hurt. That was one of the most violent crashes we've seen coming into Pro Boost this year with a new Pro Boost combination, Pro Charge deal, and then Stan Shelton with the new 67 Mustang, the screw blown combination. We saw that thing run lights out at the season opening Midwest Drag Racing Series race at XRP, and I'm interested to see those guys what they're able to do on the PDRA tour.
I'm interested to see how many of those guys, where everybody lands, right? Because I think there's still some movement, and I think there's still some possibility of movement in those ranks, right? I mean, we saw some PDRA kind of staple mates, some guys that were always in PDRA races show up at that Midwest Drag Racing Series season opener, namely Daniel Ferris, have a very successful weekend. That's a guy that we saw compete for a championship in PDRA Pro Boost last year. And I know there was like some schedule alignment issues, and Steve Petty tunes on those cars. And if he's obviously committed to a lot of different things, so they kind of had to get in where they fit in. But I am anxious to see how that all shakes out and who's chasing points where, because from what I understand, all those Pro Line cars that showed up at the season opening Midwest Drag Racing Series event, they plan to run the full pull. So I'm anxious to see how many of them do both, how many of them dabble. It's going to be fun, man. And I think it's going to keep it exciting in a lot of ways, because you never know. There's so many cars that can fit in these classes. I mean, if you want to talk about the inventory of cars that exist right now, there's probably 200 cars in the country that can run PDRA Pro Boost or Pro Nitrous, NMCA Extreme Pro Mod, Northeast Outlaw Pro Mod, Carolina Pro Mod Series, PDRA or Midwest Pro Mod. I mean, there's a lot of cars that can show up at any one of these races. And hopefully we'll see some of that, right? Some guy come out of left field and show up and upset the apple cart. Cause that's always it's great to see, like Tommy Franklin and Jim Halsey do battle all year long, but it is cool when you see someone from these other sanctions and series show up and throw a wrench in the gears. And I think we're going to see a lot of that in 2022.
Didn't we hear about some rumors maybe in Extreme Pro Stock that someone may be showing up?
There is some rumors on that. We forgot to mention.
I was trying to get it in there, Mike, but you went on.
Well, I saw you trying to get it in there. And I don't know how much of this is like super public knowledge. I put it in our notes, but there is rumor that there's some red rigs that will be eventually headed to a PDRA national event in the relatively near future. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, to see an Elite Motorsports car show up in Mount Motor Pro Stock. From what I've been told, there's already cars being bought, engines being bought. And that's honestly, it adds to the excitement that we're talking about. It really does. I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, it could be a bad thing. I mean, for the other guys in Pro Stock, but it's going to be an exciting thing nonetheless, and it will bring a lot of eyeballs to what's going on in the PDRA. And we've seen that before, right? I mean, if you look at, this is a little bit of a stretch, but look how much attention Tony Stewart brought to NHRA drag racing. If just say an Erica Enders showed up in PDRA Extreme Pro Stock, or just say a TJ Coughlin showed up in PDRA Pro Stock, that would be big news. And that would bring a whole lot of eyeballs and a whole lot of attention and a whole lot of media frenzy to the PDRA. And I don't think it'd be a bad thing. I mean, No,
I don't either. I think it'd be great.
It'd be exciting.
It certainly would be awesome to see. Those guys have some background in Mount Motor, don't they?
Well, I mean, if you think about Richard Freeman, I mean, Richard drove in Mountain Motor Pro Stock. They had a 2-car team with JR Carr, and had considerable success, I think, in their first year. And this has been like 100 years ago.
Yeah, barely remember this.
No, I mean, it's been a hot minute since IHRA Pro Stock was like a talking point in drag racing. It's been mid 2000s, probably, right, Mike? Is that fair? Mid 2000s. I mean, it's been a long time ago. I would say that was some of I don't know if that was the height of IHRA, but it was a high point, certainly a high moment for the IHRA there in the early 2000s. And I believe that 2-car team in their first year, JR Carr and Richard Freeman, they finished 2nd and 5th in the championship point standings. And I mean, hey, if Richard finished 5th in the world championship standings, what does that tell you? I mean, Erica could probably win the deal, right? So,
oh, damn.
Hey, Richard will tell you the same thing, I promise. You know what I mean?
He probably wouldn't argue with you.
No, I have one of my favorite.
He probably appreciates that you put it out there on the air, though. Yeah,
right. Well, Freeman, one time we were at dinner. I can't remember what the deal was. We were somewhere and somebody asked him, they go, "Why don't you drive that thing?" And he goes, "I can't get my foot off the damn clutch pedal. That's why." Like I can't do it, and it's
we saw Richard drive occasionally. I think
he can do
it. 2020 he qualified number 1 in Denver or something, somewhere on the western swing. Richard jumps in the car,
I think.
Yeah, and goes number 1.
I'm gonna have to look it up.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Denver 2019 or 20. Well, no, I don't think they had Denver in 2020, right? Wasn't that whole?
Right, that was the whole shutdown.
Yeah,
right?
So it had to be 2019 then.
Yeah, so it had to be July. So let's do it. Denver Pro Stock qualifying.
2020, 2021, all kind of run together.
Yeah, Richard Freeman.
They really do.
Richard Freeman, Pauls Valley, Oklahoma. Number 1 qualifier in Pro Stock, 694 with an 8, 197. Man, and you know what they say? There's no harder place to run a Pro Stock car than up there on Thunder Mountain, right? Because you're making the 1-2 gear change sub 1 second, right? Like they've got so much gear ratio in those things that you're. I mean, it's funny and this is a topic worth talking about, because don't you remember all the drama a couple of years ago? Not even, when NHRA reintroduced manual shifting to Pro Mod, and all these guys are like, "I can't pull low gear in 1 second. Well, it's impossible. Nobody out here can do it." But you got to be able to do it if you're going to run NHRA Pro Stock at a high level, right? I think it's a good thing, man. I really do think it's a good thing. So anyways, PDRA talk, I guess. What is there anything else I want to talk about? I mean, what else is going on, T?
We have guess what's starting back up?
What?
the No Prep Kings season, and it's
Oh,
15
boy.
races.
JT could not wait to talk about some street
Season
outlaws.
5. I like it. I really do. For some reason, I don't know. I guess I've been watching it since it started.
Did you say season 5?
This
Yeah,
will be
of
it'll be season
NPK.
5. Yep. And
Holy shit.
I guess I started watching it. Well, hell, I used to fill you in. Remember? I'd watch it.
Yeah,
fill
that's
you
true.
in back when it
That's
first
true.
came.
JT's our street outlaws.
this was-
solution.
Let's be
Street
honest.
Outlaws.
We're
Yeah,
making the
nothing
kind of money around here that we just got JT watching TV for us.
Yeah.
We're like,
Yeah.
JT,
And like
I ain't
this
got
week-
time to watch
this week-
TV.
This
I'm
week
out
I'll
here.
be watching the Masters most of the week, so you guys will probably. I'm gonna,
But that's a
I
true
won't be
story.
able to-
JT would
very
watch Street
easily.
Outlaws, and then he would come in the next day to the office. He'd be like, "Hey, man, did you see last night?" I'm like, "Nope. I'm gonna need you to fill me in, bro." and you did. You always would, man. What was They're doing 15 races this
15
year.
races, yep.
Yep.
And that's a heck of a schedule. What do you think of that schedule for those for these types of race teams?
I don't
I
think
don't-
it's as bad as it could have been. I think we were
Really?
thinking it was going to be even worse. We were thinking even more than 15 races for these guys, just based on all the success that this show, I call it a show, but that these events had throughout 2021. And this deal has momentum. I feel like every track in America would like to host one of these events due to the crowd that it brings out and just the money making ability of it. So it's almost like they probably had to have restraint to do on 15 races.
Well,
on
wasn't the
I
rumor that they were
agree.
going to do like 18?
I think
that-
18
I think-
was the
I think that
initial
was the
rumor.
original.
Yeah, I remember hearing that they were going to do 18 races, and it gave me pause. Like I'm going, ooh. But I
this
gotta
deal,
say,
this deal's hot, man. It's hot, and we've got some new blood, new cars coming into this. There's not really as much, official talk or press releases or whatever that we see about this deal that we do for the NHRA or PDRA. But we know Paige Coughlin has got the
And
golden
I'm
child.
excited. I'm really excited to see
Yeah.
what happens there with her.
That's going to be good.
Yep, and
She's done
Mills.
a hell of a job with promotion on that. What'd you say,
Callie
JT?
Mills, JT
Yep,
said.
yep,
I mean,
yep. And I just like to. I'm kind of curious as to who we're going to see show up for those things, and maybe try to race their way in, or to get a spot, eventually on the main show, because it's been said, start showing for these things. We'll see what happens.
I think the
And-
people are too proud, to be honest with you. I think
Yeah.
that's why what Paige is doing is such a big deal.
Because there's no
Right.
guarantee. They want. the
There's no guarantee. And I think that
Right, and they feel like they've earned it through racing, their whole
Elsewhere.
life. Yeah, and being a past champion and whatever else, they feel like that it's entitled to them almost. And
I
that's-
don't
and that's not what the way it is.
totally, I can't.
But they're also putting on a show. So this is a 2-part deal. This isn't just hey, that's a big name, let's get him over here. We've talked about it before. You can't let Stevie Jackson just walk in there and lay it down on someone, or
It's
Well,
there's a
just 'cause they're a
huge
big
responsibility, man.
is it
Like,
gonna be
it's a
good for
huge
the show?
responsibility to
Right.
protect that's your base, right? And I think that's what Pilgrim and Discovery Channel, blah, blah, everybody that's involved, they're looking at this through the lens of, we have to protect our guys. We have to protect our cast of characters that we've invested in. We've had on this show for 5 seasons, 4 years, and
Right.
many years before that. And you have to be careful. You run the risk of, if you just open the floodgates and you let anybody show up that wants to show up with a car that
Oh,
fits the
geez.
rules,
right.
you just can't do that, because
And they're gonna-
with
they're
that kind of
gonna-
money, you're going to have Todd Tutterow show up. You're going to have Ricky
Absolutely.
Smith show up. You're going to have Stevie Jackson show up.
And
You're
I
going to
think
have
that-
Jay Cox show up.
And I think they've got to, when they get somebody like, say, Justin Swanstrom, he starts showing up, and they start showing little clips of him. So you're introducing him to the fan base,
But I
and
think
then,
I think
then when he comes
Justin-
in and he does do well, when he does come in and do well, you know his backstory a little bit already. You can't just let
I agree
somebody
with
show
all
up
that,
and
but
yeah.
I think Justin fits a very specific character.
Oh, absolutely.
He has very specific character traits that they,
Like
how I
Caesar
said
salad.
earlier that Ron Capps ticks a lot of boxes. I think you look at Justin Swanstrom and you go, okay, young guy, rough around the edges, but well-spoken, willing to put it all out there, father-son dynamic, small team, work for a living, not professional drag racers. I mean, because he is. I mean,
He'll say whatever comes.
Yeah,
on
I mean,
his mind,
because
too.
there's
Big Country
this
World
part
Tour.
of it. There's the part of it of knowing that Justin was going to be there for the whole season. And if you get
Right.
like these big name racers, they'll just pop in at Darlington because it was close, and then you won't ever see them again.
And swipe
what's
your 40 grand and go, right?
Right.
Yeah.
What's that going to do for your show? That's not.
And it's going to piss off all your
anything.
regulars, right? It's going to piss off Ryan Martin, and it's going to frustrate Murder Nova, and it's going to frustrate Daddy Dave and everybody else that's involved.
These guys are testing so much now, though, for this show. And
I don't think all of them.
And yeah, I know, but there's a lot of these guys. Their shit is so good that you aren't just going to pop in and lay it down on them, though.
No, there's
you
no
know,
guarantee
I'm telling
of that.
you, their
But
shit,
even if you don't
they're
do
running some
well,
good stuff.
even if you don't do well, it's like you got to split off. There's only so much of the pie, and you got to take a piece of the pie from someone who may end up running or is going to run your full
I don't
season,
need sweets.
and
Sorry.
give it to someone that just pops in there, and then the story ends. There's no continuation the next week or whatever. So they have to look at it. That is a layer of it that I think that most other sanctioning bodies or racing organizations or competitors even don't think about. And it's not something we're trained to think about, especially when you're talking about like one-off big races. We talk about, who's showing up for Bradenton or whatever, it's a different mindset.
Let me do this.
So you have to
I have
think
a
of
fan
different
question.
Racer and cast member.
Yeah, and it's weird because the Street Outlaws No Prep Kings series, it serves a lot of purposes. Like it's doing a lot of things. And I'm curious, and I'm going to actually we had a fan question come in over the weekend, and it was basically, again, a reminder, if you have a question, you have a hot take, you have something you want to say, shoot us an email, or you can hit me up directly, wes@dragillustrated.com. We love to hear from you guys. But I got a question, and it was mainly about no prep, no time, small tire racing, but I'm going to kind of rephrase it to work with what we're talking about with Street Outlaws No Prep Kings. I ask you guys, do you think that there's room in the industry for a World Series of No Prep? Is there room for like a singular marquee event that is come one, come all? Like, do you think that something like that would work where at the Motorplex, we throw the Drag Illustrated World Series of No Prep, and we run Street Outlaws No Prep Kings rules, but it's not about being a TV show, it's about being a race. Do you think that there's room like that? Room for that in the industry?
But I think it's also, since they pay so much, on No Prep Kings, I think that it has to be big money. I mean,
huge money.
Yep, big money. And
I think 100 grand would do it, don't you?
Huh?
I think 100 grand would do it. I think, don't you?
It might. 200 grand sounds better though.
I think 200 grand doesn't sound as good. I think I think you have to go 100 stars, right? And then you have to go to a $250,000. But like, if I'm talking about marketing terminology, so it would have to be like a $250,000 to win.
Let's do a $250,000, and then that should ensure that you get all the stars as well.
That would be that'd push it to the next level.
Yeah. I'm just curious. I think that
let's do it.
That's the type of event that would bring out where you wouldn't. I think it would bring out the Ryan Martins. It would bring out Dean Carnes. It would bring all your guys, Chuck, everybody from No Prep Kings.
I think it would bring out Stevie,
but it would also bring out Stevie, Ricky, Todd Tutterow. All these guys would be out buying. I'm not saying. I actually think they would.
Maybe
I think that kind of money.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, and we just saw Marty Robertson from Elite HP. They rolled out a brand new, or the Badfish Barracuda just got finished up, and it looks to me like a big tire. It looks to me like a no prep car now, right? I mean, it was one of the world's foremost and favorite radial versus the world cars. That old girl's got big tires on the back of it, and it looks to me like she's ready for some big tire competition.
Car too, isn't it?
Yeah, for a Dodge, for a Mopar, that's decent. Yeah,
all of Marty's stuff is good looking.
It is. It's true, and I actually that's one of the only blues that I really like. That light blue with the metallic in it. I'm sure that's like a factory Dodge color. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's a great looking hot rod. But I just think that I'm wondering, man. I wonder if there's room for that, and if there needs to be that. And I wonder. I've also the question that we got from a longtime fan was his question was: does there need to be a Duck X or an NMCA of no prep? Does there need to be like a touring series that's less focused on creating television content, less focused on being a show, and more focused on, offering high-level competition for this particular type of racing? Do you think that something like that would work? So we've established that you guys agree, and I do too. I think there's room in the industry for a marquee come one, come all no prep event. Do you think that a series could work?
There is several of these races though going on. I mean, there's not a series per se, but
there's a lot of these.
Yeah, there's a lot of these races though.
There's a lot of them. I'm just saying, like some organized. There's a ton of this back of the track stuff. Obviously, Lance Stanford's deal, the Carolina No Time series is killing it.
Yep.
I mean, I think that thing's like basically a phenomenon. I want to ask this, and this was the question that we were actually submitted. What do you think? This is what it says. What do you guys think the draw is to no prep, no time style racing? Why is this so hot? What's driving that? I got to be honest, and I know that this is something that's highly controversial, especially amongst traditionalists and hardcore drag racing.
I know what you're going to say.
The clock's being off.
I knew you were going to say it.
I'm telling you. Want to know why?
Because they line up, and you got to.
There's more to it. There's more to it. Your ego is protected. But I'm telling you, man, nobody wants to be 27th on a qualifying sheet, right?
Yeah,
like
true.
When those sheets, like I take Lights Out, for instance. These are events that a lot of people are looking at the qualifying sheets. Man, you want to be in the field, right? And you want to be in the mix. And it's one thing to be like guilty by association. That's what you want. But being that guy that missed the field, like, you know how many videos there are? I watched one the other day from Reaper, right? One of the guys on Street Outlaws No Prep Kings. Reaper was talking about how, Big Chief couldn't even qualify at Lights Out. Well, if that race was a no clock, no time event, everybody that showed up qualified, right? I mean, do you know what I mean? And it just eliminates that. I talked to a race promoter out on the West Coast one time, and he told me that his most successful classes were no time classes, not because of the rules, not because of them having figured out something, but everybody's egos kind of protected by nobody knowing what anybody runs, right? You don't know who. I mean, it's obvious. Like,
it's awesome. The hustle, before they lined up too, is
all
really fun to watch. I mean, doesn't it make you, these guys are going to go at it.
Yeah, doesn't it make you more, more willing to kind of lay it on the line, to go up there and get a race and to line up beside somebody if you know down to the thousandth what their car runs and what yours runs, and
right,
it basically becomes like, like pro. I mean, that's the way like pro stock is in most professional drag racing. It takes that out of the equation and makes it so it's like you feel like you've got a shot. You don't know how quick their car is. And
everybody's got to do the Dave Grubby, right? Everybody's got to go Grubnick and just swing for the fences, basically, because you don't know what that guy's got to do.
Yeah,
I really do think
a different strategy.
I like it. I like it a lot, and I know that it's a hotly contested thing, and the hardcore drag racers want to know what every car 60 foots and what everybody's running to the middle and what back splits are, and I get it. There's a place for that. But man, if there's anything to glean from the success of Street Outlaws and No Prep Kings, what really matters is winning and losing. And that's something that we've talked about a lot here at Drag Illustrated over the years, that I think there needs to be more of a focus on that, because honestly, we're guilty. We spent like the first whole half of the show rambling on about 338 miles an hour and this elapsed time or whatever. A couple weeks ago, we lamented over Erica Enders going 645 with a 0 and pro stock. And we love those things. And I think
that's kind of what that's built around.
It is. It's built around that. And that's the language of the hardcores. That's the language of we that have grown up in the sport. But if we're going to attract the masses and we're going to make this interesting to a worldwide audience, we've got to focus more attention on just who wins and who loses, happy and sad.
I think you said it right there. It's drawing the masses. I think that is the key to it. And as long as it's drawing a big crowd and it's on the tip of everybody's tongue and at top of mind and people are showing up, racers want to race in front of a big crowd. They're adrenaline junkies. They're after that buzz, that high of racing and performing in front of a big crowd. And that to me has been a big part of the draw and what keeps these no time and no prep series going, is that they're popular. Tracks want to have their events right now. I mean, it's kind of a perfect storm.
And it's character driven.
And we've seen some of the crowds that like Woodstock, for instance, and that's this weekend, I believe, right? Down at Darlington.
Yep. Darlington Dragway, Woodstock. What is this, like version 5, 6?
The 6th year, I believe. Yeah. And we've seen some huge crowds at that thing, and some great racing.
Oh, fantastic, man.
I think when
a lot of this grudge stuff
had Radio versus World involved in it as well.
Yep.
And now they've completely dropped that, right, to go after what is hot. And it's this no time, no prep race. I mean, they're not going to run no prep there, but they will run with the clocks off. I do think that there's something to it. I think that gambling mystery aspect, that it leaves, it's open to interpretation, right? It leaves the room to wonder what these cars run, how fast they are. They're obviously fast. And I was going to say this earlier about No Prep Kings. It's clear as day that Ryan Martin's car is especially fast. It's clear as day that Justin Swanstrom's car is fast, right? I mean, Robin Roberts, like, you can tell the cars that are fast, right? But they're all guilty. If you're there, you're guilty by association. And I think that so many racers, we have to be honest, right? We're all serving our own egos, right? We want to be out here. We want to be one of the guys really bad. Then you don't want to be one of the guys that didn't qualify, right? You don't want to be an also ran. And I think when you turn the clocks off, you immediately remove that factor, and it's a big deal, man. It really is.
It is. And it's really caught on. And I think, well, it's been going on for a long time, but I think people do enjoy it. I think people in the stands, you're not sitting there wondering, what all the numbers are. If you're just a casual spectator, you watch these guys down the line, negotiate terms, and then you see them line up, and then whoever gets the light turned on, man, that's who's winning it. And you've got $100 bet with somebody over next to you. It's fun. Hell, they cleaned me out one weekend. You remember that, Wes? I was running the ATM back and forth. I'm like, Jesus.
Hey man, that's a whole other conversation. Yep. And we need to write that down, is like, how do we get gambling more a part of pro level drag racing?
Because love gambling.
that is a thing, man. Don't think for a second that sports gambling, like gambling on football, baseball, basketball games, it's driven the growth of those sports. There's no doubt about it, man. I mean, look at the money that they're injecting into those scenes. The sport of drag racing would be wise to figure that out. And I know there have been efforts made. I know there's one happening right now.
Yep.
I know that there has been, I was at an NHRA national event probably in 18 or 19, and there was some dudes there that were kind of not experimenting. They were doing some research, right? They were walking around, kind of getting the lay of the land, asking some questions, trying to see how they could bring gambling or sports betting to the sport of drag racing. And that, to me, that would be a really, really quick way for the sport to level up. Like if we are seeking a proverbial next level, that's another way. We've talked about it. Toys, reality shows, video games. The next most important thing, betting. There's no doubt in my mind. We got to get
talking about leveling up. We saw F1 announce that they're coming to Las Vegas in 2023. Everyone in all of motorsports talking about this deal. And these guys, I mean, we can't touch what they're doing right now as far as promotion and visibility and just the way they handle it. But it makes you dream that we could one day have this for drag racing.
Did you see how
Wes's out? Yeah.
Did you see how Wes's post blew up?
Yeah, I did. That's what I was getting to. Yep. Wes made a post. If you guys haven't seen it on Facebook, go find it, where he asked basically that question. How can we make this happen for drag racing, where we're doing some spectacle on the Las Vegas Strip, or we've got all this hype around it? And it was a firestorm of comments, and
I was blown away, to be totally honest, man. I mean, there was like people, like Real Racer, like Scott Palmer, Top Fuel superstar, Pro Mod superstar, chimed in that he's down. Alex Laughlin chimed in that he was down. Scott Woody Woodruff from Jegs chimed in. Basically, I just said on social, and I've been trying to be a little more active on social media. All you guys are on my ass all the time about being more active on social, so I'm trying. And I'm like, isn't this show enough? I do it every week, but apparently it's not. But anyways, I just made a post and kind of posed the question that if Formula One, Formula One is going to Las Vegas in 2023, the fall of 2023. I don't think the date's been announced, but sometime in November. We're thinking it's going to be around Thanksgiving. And the Las Vegas Grand Prix is going to happen. And I just basically said out loud on my Facebook page that it would be a shame if that event comes and goes and there's not some publicity stunt organized for a Top Fuel car, a funny car, a pro stock car, a pro mod car to do a burnout down Las Vegas Boulevard. I mean, it's going to have barriers up. It's going to have all the same. I mean, they're going to have put all the pieces in place to hold a Formula One race, right? So I'm sure the road's going to be closed for a pretty significant amount of time. And if there's not an opportunity some way, somehow to get, can you imagine the value that a video of John Force doing a burnout in front of the fountains at the Bellagio would have, or Erica Enders in that red Camaro, or Stevie Jackson in a Pro Mod car. And there's some tie-ins there because Bahrain hosts the Bahrain International Circuit, hosts a Formula One event. Bahrain sponsors a Pro Mod car. Maybe there's a way to make that happen. I don't know. But it just seems to me like it would be an opportunity lost to not get those photos, get that footage, because that's the type of footage that would find its way onto ESPN, find its way, would go viral, in my opinion, on social media or on YouTube. And I think we just need to lean into as many of those opportunities as we have. And it's kind of a great way to book in today's conversation, because it goes back to Brian Lowndes calling the Howard Stern show. Like, someone's going to have to start ringing phones and calling people. And I know that there are people willing to do it, right? There are people willing to do some of the legwork. It's going to take a group of people, but it does seem like it would be an absolute tragedy to have that event come and go and not find some way to take advantage of it. And I mean, this is something that's very common. It's piggybacking on other people's success. I mean, Donald Long, used that term constantly, and people would get a little bit salty about it and take offense to it, but it's true. He invented Radio versus the World, and then all these guys piggybacked on it. And it's true. Everybody started putting on Radio versus the World races, right? I mean, it started popping up everywhere. And it's part of it. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it. You have to understand that you run the risk of diluting it. You run the risk of not doing it as well as they do. There's all these risks associated with it. But I mean, it's part of the world. I mean, there are companies, Apple makes an iPhone, and then this company makes a case for it, or makes a charger for it, or makes a camera lens for it. Yeah. So, I mean, in my opinion, we have to piggyback on Formula One and the largest motorsport in the world. We have to piggyback on them doing everything that they've done and doing all the legwork and spending all the money and all the time to put on the Las Vegas Grand Prix. If we allow that moment to come and go without finding a way for drag racing to have its 15 minutes of fame or its moment in the sun, I think it'll be a failure, dude. I really do.
There's got to be enough crossover between all the people involved in F1 and in drag racing. There has to be enough connections or something at this point. You mentioned a couple. There were some pretty high-powered people commenting on your post as well that they were interested in it and could possibly help with some connections. I think we've got enough time now too. We've obviously got a year and a half to make this happen, and it's going to take that long. And it's something that needs to start in planning and get in people's in the top of their mind, right now, so that we can make this happen. I agree with you. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think the drag racing, because it's such a prideful sport and has that mentality that, we don't want anything to do with that. We don't want to piggyback on F1 or, their cars or nothing. There's a little bit of that mentality. Maybe they have that mentality also over on F1. They wouldn't want us involved in anything they're doing, but I think that's a scarcity mentality. And I think that there's definitely something that could happen with that.
I hope that someone's willing to make that effort. I know that there's clearly the racers, there's some interest on the racing side. I would have to think that it would be valuable to a lot of these sponsors. We were talking about Napa earlier. I can't imagine that footage. I think that the way I would put it together is if I was NHRA, I would find a way to say, hey, we will help organize this. We're going to need some help covering expenses and whatnot, and get people to basically pay to be involved in this publicity stunt where you go to some of your teams and say, hey, we're only going to have a couple of cars. We're only going to have a limited amount of time. So we will give you this 20-second time slot or whatever. You bring your own camera crew. NHRA would obviously have their own camera crew, I'm sure, and their own people. But I think you would want to offer up opportunities, and probably, to the highest bidder goes those opportunities, right? Hit up your sponsors and hit up your pro level teams and say, hey, we've got X amount of inventory of spots. We want one funny car burnout, one top fuel burnout, or whatever they're going to do, and get everybody involved, get everybody invested. I mean, and I don't think these people are afraid to spend money. Clearly they're racing top fuel and funny car. They're drag racing at the NHRA pro level. I think that you would be surprised how many people would rally around that opportunity, and that material, the video content, the photos would live on forever. And I do want to take this minute before we wrap up.
Before you start,
okay, go ahead.
The whole thing though, like the whole post, one thing I took away from it was how many people in drag racing have watched that Formula One Strive or was it Strive to or Drive to Strive?
Drive to Survive.
Drive to
Drive to
Survive.
Survive, yeah. Show. And how many people are
JT's great with names.
oh yeah, I'm awesome.
Yeah.
Drive
He is
to Strive.
fan-
That's
Drive
what
to
we're gonna call
Strive. We're doing
Yeah,
this.
just drive, man. But yeah, how many people have watched that and are a fan now? I mean, we had across the board people from all walks of drag racing on there commenting how they wanted to go. Like, regardless of what happens, we're going to get a group together. We're going to go. And if you could get that on that show as well, that's just more fans that would bring over to NHRA.
3 years ago, those comments weren't happening. And
Hell
I
no.
think I've read
Like,
articles.
I wasn't even into it.
Yeah, I've read so many articles that basically have said that this is F1 capitalizing on the success of that Netflix documentary in the US to finally get a foothold here in the United States, where it's just like the last place that they've struggled to become, a major motorsports force. And it's literally almost completely on the back of that documentary. It's
and I've got reasons why. And what I'd like to do is we're going to pay some bills here real quick. And I want to continue this conversation before we wrap the show. So bear with us, guys. Remember, friends and racers, the Wes Buck Show is brought to you by the team at Elite HP, the world leader in used race cars, racing engines, parts, and tools. Located in Fort Worth, Texas, Elite HP is operated by real deal drag racers with over 100 years of combined racing experience who can steer you in the right direction for all your racing needs. Whether it's a turnkey Pro Mod car, a set of Pro Jacks, or something in between, you can find it all at EliteHP.com. I also want to touch on our buddies over at Flow Racing. If you're a drag racer or a drag racing fan, you got to get on board with Flow Racing. The world leader in sports live streaming, Flow Racing provides unlimited access to drag racing's biggest events like Donald Long's Lights Out, No Mercy, and Sweet 16, every stop on the PDRA and NMCA tours, Funny Car Chaos World Cup finals, and the Streetcar Super Nationals in Las Vegas, and much, much more. The coolest part? Well, other than being able to watch drag racing live almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you can do it on any device. Your desktop computer, laptop, smartphone, or tablet, or via Apple TV, Roku, or Amazon Fire. On top of all of this, and I think this is really important, Flow Racing is contributing to the growth of our sport. The partnerships formed by Flow Racing with promoters in drag racing serve only to grow drag racing and put racers and events in front of more people. The platform provided by Flow is changing drag racing for the better, and there's no limit to the good they can do in our sport. So log on to flowracing.com/drag illustrated today and join the movement. Guys, I think we have to continue this conversation about Formula One because there's a bunch of fun points to be made on it. First and foremost, I said earlier, No Prep Kings. I point above all else. It's not no prep. It's not no time. It's not 8th Mile. It's not the tracks they go to. It's not the cars they race. It's the characters.
Yep.
The United States specifically, we love a story. We love a good character. We want someone to follow. I think that's how Donald Trump got elected. I think that's what's the Ukraine president's name? I'm drawing blank on it. That's terrible.
Zelensky.
Yeah, Vladimir Zelensky. He's become an international icon, right? And I think it's because we've gotten to know him. He's been in front of the camera. He's talking all the time. We know we've learned who he is, and the whole world has rallied around the country of Ukraine because of him, right?
Not really.
No, I mean, not the whole world, but I mean, there's a whole lot of people that have, right? I mean, you've got people coming out of the woodwork. I mean, everywhere you go, there's buildings with the Ukrainian flag hanging on them. I mean, it's an incredible show of solidarity for the most part, supporting the people of Ukraine. And I think it starts with a charismatic leader. Their president has the world has fallen in love with him, right? And obviously not the entire world, but a whole lot of people have fallen in love with that character. And I think that's what Netflix brought to the table when they introduced Drive to Survive, the Formula One documentary, right? You about got me. I about said Drive to Strive. Yeah. But I really think we were introduced to all these drivers. We were introduced to crew chiefs. We were introduced to team managers and all these people. We started to put faces to names. We got to see how they handled situations. We got to see how they interacted with one another. We got to see how they sound when they talk, how they dress, how they treat people. And we started taking sides. We started picking favorites, right? And that has made all the difference in the world. And it's not like Formula One hasn't been wildly successful for a long, long time. It's the biggest motorsports in the world, but it never really took root in America. And I think it's because we didn't know the characters. We didn't know the cast.
There
Nobody
were no
introduced
American
it to us.
drivers.
There were no
very
American
few throughout the
drivers.
history. So
Right?
we didn't
exactly
have that
how it
to,
works. And all
we
that.
didn't have that to
Yeah,
grasp
went on to this
onto.
department.
I also think that F1, think about how many shows we have, like ESPN shows and stuff that cover basketball, football, baseball.
Yeah.
There's really not a lot that cover racing. And I think that, and if they do, it's like, you know, NASCAR covers their own deal. NHRA covers their own deal. F1 doesn't really have that in the States. I think they have more exposure and coverage in these other, like via Sky Network and things like that in Europe, to get more opportunity. And, you know, it's kind of in our defense. It was our only opportunity to meet these characters was through this Netflix documentary. And I also think it's super fascinating how, like you said, especially in America, that's what we gravitate toward, is heroes. And that continues. We see it over and over in corporate America, like Steve Jobs at Apple, or the dude at WeWork. There's been multiple documentaries on him and how that one crazy
charismatic leader, dude. There are books written about this. Behind almost every meaningful movement in the history of the world is a singular charismatic leader. Seriously. I mean, you can go down the list. There are good or bad, right? I mean, and a charismatic leader, and I can make some drag racing examples. And there's 2 points I want to make. First off, talking about the Formula One docuseries on Netflix, another example of Formula One taking matters into their own hands. Right. I mean, I know that they were involved in the financing of that programming. They've had a deep involvement in it. And I think it's kudos to them for knowing what needed to happen in order to capture the attention, capture the imagination of an American audience. Right. I think that was part of their move, was to, how can we make this sport, this motorsport, more mainstream in America? And they knew they had to introduce our country and our population to these characters and these people, and educate us. And they knew it wasn't going to happen overnight. Now they're in their 4th season, and I think, I mean, it's never been hotter. Formula One is as hot as it's ever been, and it doesn't seem to be losing momentum. And it's crazy because I actually got a press release from somebody in Formula One the other day that was talking about how much that show had grown all these drivers' social media. I think Max Verstappen's, the reigning champion, the show has grown his social media presence like tenfold, right? I mean, he went from having like 1 million followers to 10 million followers on the back of that show. And it goes on down the list. Even the guys that don't have massive followings have much more significant followings now than they did before the show. So it goes to show you the value of that type of programming, what it can do for you and what it can do for your business. And I think that you got to give respect to these groups and these organizations and these businesses and whatever that take matters into their own hands. And that's clearly, in my opinion, what Formula One has done with the Drive to Survive show. And they deserve any success that comes from it. They absolutely deserve. The second point that I wanted to make on it is completely escaping me right now. So somebody else talk.
I can't believe the money that's over there in F1. I mean,
yeah,
I threw the numbers out before, but what was it, like $800
$1 billion basically
for a year, and then the lesser teams was around like 400 million or something like that.
And they crashed one of those cars, and it's totaled. It's like multi-million dollars.
And then you look at their setups at the
track. They tear that stuff up a lot.
Yeah, and the setups at the tracks for the teams, you're like, what is that? Because it's like,
how do you get?
It's like, what is that? Is it a transformer?
It is a transformer. Most of those trailers like flip open and they become floors, and there's multiple decks. It's really, really, really impressive.
Those have to be hauled in. There has to be like a dozen rigs for each team, right? And then they assemble it like Legos at every track, and then disassemble it.
Super cool.
I mean, that's wild, and it looks all like seamless and perfect, like it's all glass and modern. I mean, that deal's wild.
I love that stuff. To be honest with you guys,
that deal is awesome.
Has Dion watched any of this yet? Have you made him watch it, Wes?
Formula One Drive to Survive. I haven't. I don't know that I'm big on those who've been around me and work with me a lot. I'll make you read a book every now and then. I may make you watch a movie every now and then. I may make you watch a show every now and then. Have I made you watch Drive to Survive yet? You're muted.
Muted.
I actually just watched it on my own.
Oh, and did you like it?
Yeah, I've always been a decent Formula One fan.
I'm a big fan of it, man. I think they've done a fantastic job. I love all that, and there are times that I think there's room in drag racing for some of that. And that was my main thing for trying to rally everybody around going to the Formula One race next November. I think there's a lot to learn. Mike and I have been preaching this for 100 years.
We're just going.
Going to these events that are outside of our wheelhouse, it's super valuable. I don't care if it's an NBA game, an NFL game. We've talked a lot about going to those Red Bull Air Race events, going to tractor pulling events, whatever it is. There's something to learn. There's something to feel.
Nemo Fair,
the Nemo Fair
this week, right? Yeah. Or whatever.
Yeah, the soybean festival, the Nemo Fair.
Was going to love that.
Those are big events.
No,
but
neither of those.
We see a lot of the younger generation really liking the F1 stuff too. So yeah, there's something to be learned for sure.
One more thing that I think all of us can take away from what Mike was talking about, these one guy kind of leading the charge, these charismatic leaders, whether it's WeWork or Steve Jobs and technology or at Apple or whatever, that exists in drag racing too. Look at Chris Graves. Like Chris Graves is the charismatic leader that's waving the flag for funny car racing right now. He and people are rallying around him, and that event is as successful as it is. That event and all the series that Chris Graves has, I mean, God bless the racers, God bless the tracks, God bless the sponsors, but it starts with Chris. Radial Tire Racing, Donald Long. He put drag radial on the map. It is no secret that was a show filler category prior to Donald Long. They were the also rans. They were parked in the weeds. They were not at all part of the show, but Donald Long grabbed that Radial Tire flag, started shouting from the rooftops, waving it, screaming and yelling, and look at where we are now. Drag radial radial versus the world is still one of the premier categories in all of drag racing. Pro 275, X275, Ultra Street. These are amongst the most hotly contested, most popular classes that exist in drag racing. It's because of Donald.
Sears. You got John Sears on that end too. He's the leader and the face of that. I think you could argue Sam Corcus when it comes to the no prep.
100%.
Yep.
You got to have guys like that, man.
Yep. Anderson and Freeman, and as recently in Pro Stock.
I would agree. Anderson and Freeman is a great example in Pro Stock. And I got to be honest, not at all trying to be self-serving, but I truly believe in my heart of hearts, some of the issues that exist, especially with NHRA Pro Mod, is that there's not like a singular character screaming and yelling about Pro Mod. And I'm not saying it was us or me, but I think Pro Mod as a whole is less when there's not a World Series of Pro Mod. Do you guys agree with that? I mean, I know it seems biased, but I think that event, even if you didn't race in it, it elevated everything else, that there was an event like that. It's like saying that you play baseball. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I play baseball, like the World Series, the playoffs, that's what I do, right? I don't play in the MLB, but I play baseball. I think that we brought like an air of mainstream-idness, if that's a thing, to Pro Mod racing. And even guys that didn't run out in Denver still kind of pointed to that event as this marquee, big money, highly publicized thing. And they were able to be guilty by association. And I honestly think that if NHRA Pro Mod wants to get back to where it once was, they're going to need someone screaming and yelling about it. And I think every sanction and series can learn from these things, that you have to have a highly visible.
That's what Steve and Danny were doing
Danny Rose, Steve Matusik, the Real Pro Mod Association. They were those guys that were truly invested, truly cared, and it wasn't a job. Because here's the thing, you can't hire someone to do it, right? I mean, I had this conversation multiple times. No one was going to care. This is an example that can kind of ruffle some feathers, but no one is ever going to care about the ADRL the way Kenny Nolling cared about it, right? I mean, it was his thing. He loved it. He lived and breathed ADRL every day. Same thing with me, with the World Series of Pro Mod. That deal was my life, right? And every opportunity I had, every moment. And it wasn't because it was my job. It wasn't, matter of fact, we didn't take any money. You know what I'm saying? Like we just truly believed in it. And that's what is required, especially in this day and age when people have a bazillion options. There's a ton of stuff going on in the world. If there's not someone screaming and yelling, waving the flag, and it's authentic and passionate, you're going to struggle, man. You're going to absolutely struggle. Do I sound like a crazy person? I don't
know.
No.
It's 100%. You're as good of an example of that as anybody. So you're authorized to speak on that.
Well, I just think it's an interesting thing that doesn't get talked about enough. And I think our sport needs. I got interviewed for not a local Texas newspaper. I don't know where this guy was from, actually, but I got interviewed for a story the other night. And he was just asking me, like, is there anything that you wish for the sport of drag racing in terms of like media and that type of thing?
You're like, oh no, dude, how much time you got?
I did. I actually said, how long is this story going to be? Because I'm about to melt your recorder down. But I just told him that we need as many highly passionate, highly enthusiastic people preaching the gospel of drag racing as possible. I think our sport we've arrived at a time when everybody's afraid to be a fan. Everybody wants to be a racer. No one wants to acknowledge that they're just a fan of drag racing. Everybody wants to be a racer. Like if you bump into somebody wearing a John Force t-shirt at your local grocery store and you tap them on the shoulder and say, hey man, are you a fan of drag racing? I would bet you lunch that they're going to give you some bullshit story that they used to crew for John Force back in the 70s. And he gave me this shirt and I used to work on his, right? Because they don't want to just say that they love drag racing. Because that's the environment that we've kind of created. And we need to foster fandom in drag racing. We need to foster, it's okay to just love this stuff. It's okay to be a fan of the sport of drag racing. And, even like myself, have I raced some in the past? Yeah, I don't race currently, but I'm not afraid to admit I love the sport of drag. I love this shit. It's all I want to do. It's all I want to talk about. It's where I spend my free time. My wife asked me what I want to do on a weekend off. I want to go to the drag races, right? I mean, it's my favorite thing to do. And I don't think we need to foster that and nurture it, encourage people to be vocal with their fandom and be more outward with their passion and enthusiasm for the sport, because that's what all the other sports have, is people that are willing to share their enthusiasm, talk about things, even though they haven't played in the freaking NBA finals. They're still willing to offer their opinion and share some enthusiasm and insight on the NBA finals. So that's a cool way for us to wrap the show up for the day, guys. Thanks for the time, man. It's been a good one, right?
Yeah, man.
Do you like this going around the room question thing?
Yeah,
I do.
I really do too, man. And I hope I want to encourage all you guys out there to remember to please don't hesitate to hit us up. Shoot us an email, wes@dragillustrated.com, jt@dragillustrated.com, Mike Mike@dragillustrated.com, even Dion @dragillustrated.com. You can hit up each and every one of us, hit up one of us, hit up all of us. We'd love to hear from you. If you have something you want us to talk about, you have something you want us to tackle right here on the show, we'd be happy to do it. Until next time, guys, we will see you here on the World Wide Web next Wednesday.